Mr. Trimble, what was she wearing when she disappeared?
She's wearing a pair of blue jeans, just blue slacks with a little cotton over blouse that was blue and white with a little red trim around the neck.
50 years ago this month, a 9-year-old girl dashed out her kitchen door in Green Hills to deliver Girl Scout cookies to a neighbor.
I just want to say to everybody that if you see her, just call the Metropolitan Police Department.
She was never seen alive again.
She doesn't have a jacket on, and it was cold last night. Now, if anyone is holding her, please call the police department.
Her name was Marcia Trimble, and if 24-hour news had existed in 1975, Marcia would be as familiar a name as John Benet Ramsey. To this day, her death is no less puzzling.
Major, is Marcia missing or has she been kidnapped?
Well, that's a question we have not answered. We are hoping that she will show up safely, but it's just pure theory of whether she's kidnapped or abducted.
And as far as the official word is, she's still considered missing. There has been no credible call from any would-be kidnapper.
Within the first 48 hours, police tapped the Trimbles' telephone, recording all calls in and out. But they never made any of this public.
Hello?
Mr. Trimble?
Yes.
Okay, just listen for me. I can possibly tell you where your dog is, if you could be.
Wait just a minute now. Let me get something to write on, all right? You know, you say you've got information and you want money.
I got direct information. I can get in your car with you and show you directly where this man is. I'm not going to get out and grab him for you, but I can ride out there and show you where he'll be and who he is, and then you'll know what to look for.
Charlie got a call from a man who claimed to know where Marcia was.
He described the abductors as dangerous men, black Muslims.
But the dudes will hurt.
Uh-huh.
They will hurt.
Well,
matter of fact, I can tell you, they are Muslims.
Are these black men that have her?
Right.
And she is here in town?
She's here in town.
Police wouldn't take it seriously.
I believed it, but I didn't believe it. This man wanted to carry us into the Muslim neighborhood. He's trying to get us involved in something. You know, it's when all the blacks and the whites, it could have been a war.
The audio tape was still there, but information on that informant's call was nowhere to be found in the voluminous police file.
There's no supplemental information saying that any of that ever occurred. That was never written down.
Why wasn't something like this written up in the file?
It was written up. I wrote it up. I'm telling you, somebody took part of it, or it disappeared or whatever. I wrote up everything I'd done.
And from all indications, the informant knew what he was talking about and had spoken with the police chief, Joe Casey.
Now, let me tell you a little something. I called Mr. Casey personally, you know, when this here thing was going on. And I told Mr. Casey personally where he could find this man. He goes there with all those doors and things, sticking the doors in and going on, and finds nothing. See what I'm saying? For one reason, they went by it the wrong way. And I sent them to a direct house where they could pick this man up, crushing this man. But they went there, blocking off the whole street. He might have been over in the store somewhere. In other words, he wasn't in the house, but he was around somewhere where you see him when they pulled in. You know what I'm saying? It just blows, you know what I'm saying?
It took 37 years for police to acknowledge that phone call. To this day, no one knows the tipster's name.
She was on her back.
Was she under lumber tires?
She was under something.
You know what she's covered up with, sir?
I think a swimming pool.
Any idea how long she's been there?
No.
Nobody.
She's been there a month. I can't say how long.
No one at the Tharp home is suspect.
33 days after she disappeared, on Easter Sunday, Marcia was found dead in a neighbor's garage, 150 yards away from home. She had been strangled and sexually assaulted. Police say they had searched that garage, not once, but several times.
If the garages have been searched, why wasn't something more discovered here?
I don't know.
Major,
That's
what
a good question.
From a legal standpoint, the Trimble murder case is closed. DNA would eventually link a serial rapist who had also murdered a Vanderbilt student. He had worked as a day laborer at a tree nursery in the neighborhood. He was black, and he was Muslim. Once we knew his name, I reported on him extensively.
From Nashville's Channel 4, WSMV TV, bringing you Demetria Kalodimos with the news.
Jerome Barrett wasn't hard to find by name in the old Nashville Banner archive. There was the envelope packed with yellow clippings from the 1970s. Student raped in dormitory at Belmont. A housewife raped. Barrett indicted. So why did it take 32 years to consider this man in a flurry of crimes happening right then and there, like the disappearance of Marcia Trimble?
No, I didn't know anything about him. I don't remember his name. I don't remember anything at all coming up about him.
You think Barrett will ever talk?
I don't think so. Miss Trimble still has a lot of hope that he will.
How seriously did they take the black Muslim call early on in the case?
They didn't take it serious at all, and I think that was a crucial point. When I picked Virginia up to carry her to the DA's office, and we were going to explain what was going on, with the Barrett deal, we talked in the car on the way up there, and I mentioned that Barrett was a Muslim, and she said, "Oh, is that involving the same call that came into my house?" And I said, "I don't know anything about a call coming to your house."
There are still people living in and around our city who believe the person police first suspected and relentlessly investigated for decades was indeed involved.
Things kept popping up over the years that would lead us back to Jeffrey Womack. Something Jeffrey had said in passing, or had said at a party, or had said to this one, or said to that one.
To them, Jeffrey Womack will always be guilty. Because that's the way the story was told. Longtime homicide detective Sherman Nickens.
But he's going to live with that the rest of his life, as long as he's in this community. Wouldn't you think, John?
Absolutely.
I mean, we ruined him.
I first met Jeffrey in 2011, though I had seen him decades before, working in the kitchen at Dalt's, a West Nashville restaurant where Channel 4 News folks hung out after the show. Someone pointed him out and said, "You know, that guy killed a little girl and got away with it." Really? Almost every year in February, a key TV ratings month, we'd pull out the old tapes, resurrect the Trimble family's tragedy, and try to track Jeffrey down again. But Jeffrey never talked to anyone.
Meanwhile, the investigation into the death of Marcia Trimble continues. But until somebody is arrested and convicted, that cloud still kind of hangs over his head.
I think that it probably does.
One day I got word from my friend, local writer and reporter Tom Wood, that Jeffrey and his attorney, the late John Holland Sr., were writing a book on his case. Remember now, the crime had been solved. The killer was finally identified, tried, convicted, and jailed. Jeffrey was at long last cleared. But police were still refusing to release their complete case file to journalists or to Jeffrey. Hollins and Wood were itching to do battle for the truth, to find out why police never would let Jeffrey Womack shake the stain of suspicion. They asked, would I want to collaborate and produce a companion video documentary? Jeffrey was finally ready to talk. About everything. To me. In In this special episode of Banner and Company, I'll revisit my investigation of Nashville's crime of the century, the 1975 murder of Marcia Trimble. As told by Jeffrey Womack, the man some have falsely accused in this case for 50 years. A man who has never received a public apology.
BTW, FYI. Visit Nexplanon.com RN to learn about Nexplanon. It's an adjustable implant, 68 milligrams radiopaque. Or ask your HCP IRL. Okay, TTYL.
It wasn't until 1975 that Womack became a household name in Nashville, for all the wrong reasons. But at one point, they had ties to society and a degree of influence. Jeffrey can trace his roots to the H.G. Hill grocery dynasty.
My great-grandmother was a Hill. That would be my grandfather's mother. He worked for the Hill Company for 25 years and decided to venture out and start his own line of grocery stores. He had 13, called Womack's New Way. Every neighborhood had a corner store, and then he had a big one in East Nashville.
Jeffrey was the youngest of 3 boys. The family lived in Green Hills, in a house the grandfather owned.
Are you gonna ride with us? You gonna follow us?
He's gonna be the...
That's a new house because my dad used to mow their yard. We used to play football in this backyard right here. God, it was so small.
There used to be wide open spaces in this neighborhood, even a rock quarry.
That's Mary Margaret Macy's home, which has never changed.
When we drove the neighborhood, he could point out every house.
Right here on the corner. And then, if I'm not mistaken, Betsy Roth lived here. And then,
she was next door to the Trimbles.
And then this would be the Trimbles here. That would be the Trimbles.
The Trimbles lived at 4009 Copeland Drive. Jeffrey and his family at 4102. There were lots of kids in the neighborhood. On bikes and on foot, it was the 70s. Jeffrey was 15, a Hillsborough High student, just starting to grow his hair long, just starting to become a little rebellious.
I do remember my dad finding a bag of pot in my coat one time. We had a little schnauzer dog, and we'd take it out back to walk it, and we'd smoke it out the back behind the house. Well, my dad knew. I mean, we thought we were getting away with something. We really thought we were getting away. And I woke up this morning, and my bag of pot is not in my coat pocket. It was gone, and I went to my mom and asked her, and she said, yes, your dad was going to pour it down the toilet. And she stopped him because she said it would clog it up. And she kept it for me. Yeah, she put it in her panty drawer. They had those perfume cards. So everybody made fun of my pot because it tastes like perfume. But it didn't act like perfume, okay?
The day Marcia disappeared, Jeffrey had seen her and spoken to her.
My mom's across the street getting her hair done, sitting in the woman's in her front door, looking straight at our house. They see Marcia come up the driveway. She knocks on the door, and all I did was go to the door and say, look, I don't have the money. I'll come down there later and get the cookies. She said, that's fine. And she left. That was all that was said.
He went to another house down the street where a woman ran a daycare. Jeffrey was paid to help watch the kids while the parents were out bowling.
Come about 7:30 that night, or going on 8 o'clock, my mom calls over there and says, Jeffrey, have you seen Marcia? I said, no. I said, this afternoon? She goes, yes, well, I saw her too. And my mom tells me about how she walked down our driveway and sat on the top of our bank like she was going through where else she was going to go, deliver the cookies. And my mom said, well, she's missing and they can't find her. About 8:15 or 8:30 or whatever, boy, the neighborhood was filling up. Cars were driving up down the roads, and I don't much remember there was a lot of traffic in the neighborhood, okay, and it was dark. And I think Mary Margaret Macy came over or something, because I ended up with her dad and them down at the Thorpe's garage looking in that garage there. And Mary Margaret was talking to me, and I said, I saw her this afternoon. She goes, well, you need to go tell them. Because I know when I got to the Trimbles house, Mary Margaret was there standing outside when I spoke to this police officer and told him that I saw her. And he just blew me off, you know. Well, then Mary Margaret stayed there and she told him, and goes, you know, somebody came down here and offered to tell you that they saw her this afternoon. They're trying to figure out who did she last see or whatever like that. He goes, that's when they found out who I was, and that's when they called me, you know, to the Trimble house.
One of the interviews they've done was with a secret mystery witness, a 15-year-old boy. Major, can you tell us what's the deal with this 15-year-old who saw her?
I don't have any comment to make on that this time.
The very first report in the Trimble police file is handwritten on tattered notebook paper in mismatched ink. It mentions Marcia by name twice. There are 8 references to Jeffrey Womack. I recall seeing Jeff being brought into the house and taken to the front bedroom. He was there for several hours. I remember the officers saying something about Womack having rolls of pennies and a $5 bill on him. I had heard earlier something about Marcia taking rolls of pennies with her in a cigar box.
Everyone calls them pennies, but you specifically remember them being something else.
They were pennies, but they were in a quarter wrapper. They weren't in the penny wrappers. We know that she had a $5 bill. Her grandmother had given her a $5 bill. We knew that she had some penny wrappers. They were actually quarter wrappers with pennies in them. The lady next door had paid her for her cookies that way. Later, what was missing, I mean, a $5 bill, those penny wrappers, Jeffrey had that night in his pockets.
Coincidence?
Well.
Okay, in the Trimbles' bedroom was Tommy Jacobs, R.C. Jackson, and Sherman Nickens. And they started asking questions about, what did you do this afternoon? I mean, all I tried to start telling was, she came to my house this afternoon at around 4:30 or whatever. Oh, well, what'd you do before that? And I was like, you know, that's when it all started getting confusing, okay? They never hardly let me finish what I was trying to tell them. Before they wanted a timetable. All right, what'd you do at 4:45? What'd you do at 10 to 5? What'd you do at 5 to 5? They just started going these 5-minute increments. Who can do that? And then I had to empty my pockets out. And I don't remember. I know I had a condom in my pocket. And I had a $5 bill. And I had a penny wrapper with some pennies in it, okay? And then they checked my arms to see if I was shooting up drugs, okay? Yeah. And I know for sure they asked me to take my shoes off, and that's when they saw the fuck you on my shoes. They asked me to take them off. They would word questions to you where there was a yes answer to one of them and a no answer to the other one, and the third one would chime in, well, what is it, yes or no? When I left there that night, I was real confused. How did this turn out like this? Peggy went and got my mom, and that's when they came down there. She said, come on, Jeffrey, you want to talk to him? You talk to his lawyer. And Jacob's the one who said, well, who's his lawyer? And she said, John Hollis. And Jacob said, shit. Well, the next house went ahead, and I went to school, kind of put it, you know, out of mind, you know. I went to school, and I got out of school, and I came home, and me, my mom, and my dad went to see John. Went down to John's office. That's when I met John.
John Hollins was a high-priced attorney for the day. He took the case, never realizing how long it would last.
He was a kid. Maybe his hair was a little longish. He didn't look like a murderer to me or talk like a murderer. I guess I thought he was innocent as a newborn lamb from the moment I met him. I mean, I just couldn't believe this boy had done it. But in cases of that sort at that time and even later, I wanted a big case like that. I wanted to get a polygraph examination of my client or prospective client, and I did that with Jeffrey.
I'd never taken one before. I basically didn't even know what one was. I thought the polygraph was just a normal formality. I didn't know it's going to be based on whether he believed me or not. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure it upset my mom and dad. I know it did. I really don't remember being scared. I was more confused, you know.
In this clip from my 2012 documentary on the case, you can still see the media circus gathered in the front yard, and already reporters have learned of a polygraph.
A 15-year-old neighbor boy has reportedly taken a lie detector test given privately and may take a Metro polygraph today. He is not a suspect, however.
They couldn't mention my name because I was a juvenile. A long-haired, brown-eyed boy that lives in the neighborhood. Duh.
Jeffrey would eventually take 5 polygraphs, 2 of them administered by police.
Man, you would have thought that would have been enough.
The private polygraph expert who twice tested murder spec Jeffrey Womack said today he believes Womack was telling the truth when he denied having anything to do with Marcia Trimble's disappearance.
I feel without question that he was truthful in his denials of kidnapping, killing, or any abuse of Marcia Trimble.
What do you think of polygraphs?
Polygraphs are 50-50.
I know people that have failed the polygraph just repeating what their name is. If they don't have any guilt feelings about it, they don't have a reaction, they'll pass it. I'm not saying that, I don't know whether he failed them all or passed them or what happened. I just remember hearing that one of them was inconclusive.
If polygraphs weren't to be trusted, what about psychics? Police took at least one man from the Bronx pretty seriously. He came to town 20 days into the investigation.
That's a funny story. What's in the file is not as good a story as the one Tommy tells about it. He talked about picking the individual up and putting him out in the neighborhood some distance from the house, and the guy had a little box with a piano wire in it, and he would roll it through his fingers while he was walking through the neighborhood. And during that time, he went to the Trimble house, and he had some vibrations, and he pointed to this window, and he said, "That's the child's bedroom." And then he went up to Jeffrey's house, and he started waving his hands. And this was before Jeffrey had become a suspect, I think. Waving his hands and had a reaction up there at that house as well. Then the last thing Tommy said he remembered was the guy went up behind the garage where her body had been found, and he started choking himself and passed out. And when he got up, he said, "I'm sorry, she's dead and she's underwater."
We received a telephone call, a tip from an unknown person telling us about a certain pond.
But later they drained the pond.
It is the person who provided this reliable tip to you to come out and check this lake considered a suspect?
Well, it's a possibility.
The anonymous source was that psychic, you know.
That's the latest from here. We now switch live to Channel 4's Jerry Lynn at the rescue headquarters at the Trimble residence on Copeland Drive.
Several clues have turned up today. A Highway 100 pond is being dragged on a telephone tip. A bloody shirt in Warner Park turned out to be a man's shirt. And an abandoned car is being checked. That also at Warner Park.
In 1975, when this happened, there was no television with any of this kind of stuff on it. It didn't happen. It was not reported. It didn't happen. I mean, our world was different. So we didn't know how to look at it like they did in the JonBenet Ramsey case. For us, it was, of course Marcia's coming home.
The search, which began Tuesday night, has scoured this area, and officials are now beginning to fear the worst, that the child may have been kidnapped by a sex offender.
And then we were shocked when the police said, well, it might be a sex crime, because nobody knew. They didn't know. Why did they say that? I don't know.
Even today, police can't seem to agree when it comes to this piece of paper, now contained in the Trimble file, a 1975-era list of recently released sex offenders. It's not dated or signed. Was it there from the very beginning? Barrett's name is fourth on the list.
There was nothing, no supplements or anything like that. That may have been something we pulled up later. But we went back and got a lot of the documents from the Corrections Department and put them in the file after we determined who he was. But there was no mention, he was never investigated by the police department in 75 all the way up through 90.
The key to the mystery, there in black and white. Was it compiled in the first few days, prompted by reporters raising the question?
Do you think she's been kidnapped by a sex prevert?
We really don't know. It's a possibility that she has, but we don't know that.
Nothing random was going to fit the profile of what they were thinking. White guys, white fathers, white kids, anything at the age of puberty and above. It's just a black guy, but nobody really wanted to hear that. And if his name was in that, as far as the early releases, I'll guarantee you that's why he was eliminated. I don't know where Jeffrey really was that day. I know he wasn't killing Marcia Trimble.
I don't know if they were watching me every day. Basically, I didn't really care. At one point, I didn't care. They put undercover cops on me twice. Tried to get one of my best friends to turn on me wearing a wire. There were no limits to these people. To try to get evidence from people who had nothing to do with this. Nothing. And we wouldn't talk to them because we didn't know anything. So they badgered the hell out of us. No, coming home from school one afternoon, I saw the undercover cop car pull out behind me. When I pulled out of Hillsborough High School, I saw them pull out behind me. Whatever road I turned on, they turned on. It didn't make any difference if it was on the way to my house or just zigzagging. They stayed right with me. So I knew it. So let's race around the neighborhood one time, you know, for the fun of it, you know. I just want to see how far they'd push it. Then my dad heard the car come up the street. And I pulled up in the driveway and they got out of the car. And my dad come out of the garage and said, we want to talk to Jeffrey. And Dad said, get the hell off my property. Another incident when Tommy Jacobs was pacing back and forth in my backyard when I came home too. He was wearing dark sunglasses and a black shirt, black pants, and he's pacing back and forth. Like he was in a study or something, you know. My dad told him to get the hell out of there. One mention of something in that neighborhood at that time, it was the gospel. Did you hear about this? And then he goes to the next person and the next person. And pretty soon, somebody writes it down. And you know what? It becomes the truth, you know, to some people. You know, it ends up in a police file that that's the truth. Did it happen? Probably. Who knows? That's why it's hard for me to believe any of those articles that they hand wrote themselves. You know? None of them were signed, sworn statements. I didn't see, we didn't have any of those, did we? They were just their notes. What they say happened.
A 20-year-old man was arrested today and charged with the 1975 murder of 9-year-old Marcia Trimble. In the 4.5 years since that murder, the suspect, Jeffrey Womack, has taken and passed 4 lie detector tests. Nevertheless, this morning, Womack was arrested on what Metro Police are calling conclusive evidence. From what we've been able to piece together, Womack was a good child who dropped out of school, turned to wandering, and had trouble holding a job. Here's more in a report from Don Mosley.
One neighbor remembers Jeffrey Womack as a good child, the youngest of 3 brothers who generally stayed in the backyard and played. Mrs. Laura Doyle, who lives next door, says she was surprised and she is not convinced that the police have the right person. The Jeffrey Womack that she remembers was a real nice boy. Other neighborhood residents feel the same way. They speak privately but not publicly of a nice church-going family, unconvinced that Jeff Womack is guilty.
If they're going to do it, they're going to do it, you know. There wasn't a whole lot I could do. I feel that having such a good attorney like John, who kept me out of jail, also was a thorn in their side that made them do the dirty shit they did to me, okay? All right? Because they couldn't get to me through him, okay? So they played their dirty tactics, okay, to try to break me down, but it didn't. I didn't break.
It was a bad case, the arrest of Jeffrey Womack. A year ago, Womack was booked for the murder of 9-year-old Marcia Trimble. 2 days ago, the charges were dropped, and Womack's record is in the process of being wiped clean. Given the enormous amount of publicity and emotion that surrounds this case, and now the fact that you have dropped charges, does this leave the District Attorney General's office with a black eye?
I guess the public's going to have to make a judgment about that. It's obviously a position I'd rather not have been in. If I could go back, I wish it were that Mr. Womack had never been arrested.
They're interviewing people in 1979 or 75, and then going back in 79 and interviewing them, and then interviewing them in 91, and then taking all 3 interviews and picking and choosing what they want out of them. In each interview, they're saying, "Are you sure this is what you saw?" I would imagine that most of the interviews, people changed what they said, but they fit a bunch of them to fit their own needs.
The charges may have been dropped, but the investigation of Jeffrey would crop up again and again. He was pretty sure his phone was being tapped.
And the phone would pop and crack. Now, John assured me that the phone wasn't being tapped. Now, when Ed Yarbrough used to call me on the phone and say, "Jeffrey, I need to talk to you," he'd say, "Not over the phone. Come down and talk to me." Ed always had me go down to the office and talk. Now, John, that's fine, you know, but John would talk over the phone. Ed, no.
They even sought out his best friend from childhood.
When I talked to Doug, "Jeffrey, I don't remember where we played basketball, man. I just don't remember anymore." Well, it doesn't matter anymore, okay? The fact is they went up there and got him all upset. Back in 1991, when they started that reinvestigation all over again and trying to file charge, went up there, he calls me at my mom's condo and says, "Jeffrey, man, do something, man." He said, "These guys are coming after you again." I said, "Fuck those guys." He said, "Jeffrey, you don't understand. They're ready to play hardball." I said, "Fuck them, Doug." I said, "Let them kiss my ass." And he started to tell me, he goes, "Just talk to him, man, straighten all this out." I said, "Doug, what are you talking about?" He goes, "If you did anything wrong, just tell him." See, they already got him all screwed up, okay? This is what they did. This is how they did, is they kept going back to people again and telling them, "Jeffrey, just keep repeating the same crap." Back in 1995, I was with my oldest child and her mother. We were at Hickory Hollow Mall eating in the food court, and I look up and there's Tommy Jacobs staring at me. Sitting at a table in the food court. He's not eating or anything. He's just staring at us.
The most painful, though, was his own mother's moment of doubt.
Didn't your mom once look you right in the eye?
Yeah, and asked me if I killed her. "Just tell me what happened." With tears in her eyes. Well, you had to do something. You know, that's what people kept thinking over 30 years. Well, why would they keep coming after you if you don't know something, Jeffrey? I bet I heard it 1,000 times. What did you have to do that made them do this to you?
This statement from the late District Attorney Tom Shriver may be the closest we have ever come to a public apology for Jeffrey.
If I could go back, I wish it were that Mr. Womack had never been arrested.
But at this point, that's kind of hard, and what he's been through, considering what he has been through in his family, is it enough just to say that?
Well,
is there any more?
I don't know what else I can say. It happened. It is regrettable that it did happen.
There are times it was hard being me, okay? I'll admit that, okay? I've never met anybody that doesn't know who I am. And I'm talking about if I know them for any period of time, I've never met anybody and been friends with them any period of time that doesn't know who I am. In connection with this shit. Nobody. When people look at you, someone found out who I was. Their attitude towards me the first couple of times after they found out who I was not the same. When I spoke to them, it was not the same. What did you have to do that made them do this to you? Nothing. Be a 15-year-old kid, smoke some pot, drink. Not talk to them. That's what I did. I had the ability and the guts to reach over and kick the door shut. And forget about it. Had to. I don't know. I had to not let it matter. And if it ain't in your mind, it don't matter.
The most reliable information on the case can be found in The Suspect, a book by Jeffrey Womack, John Hollins, and Tom Wood. And I'd like to thank my partner on the 2012 documentary Indelible, photojournalist Jim Garvey. Banner & Company is a production of the New Nashville Banner. Our producers are Steve Harouche and Andrea Tudhope, though I produced this episode myself. The original music is by Verlin Thompson. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or go to NashvilleBanner.com. As we like to say, you're in good company.